Are you ready for the weekend yet? We have events, news, and a guest for you to enjoy this Lake Life weekend. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Lake Life Weekend podcast. We are in week 35 of this year, 2017. I'm Dirk, I'm your host. Thank you for tuning in. And stay with me to hear an interview with Nick Leonard. He is the Director of Tourism and Economic Development for the county, Otter County, and he will share with us insights on tourism, the economic situation in Ottertail, all it bears, some insights from the state of Minnesota. He also serves on the Tourism Council for our governor. Is a very interesting insight interview, so please stay tuned. Now some news, and we picked up some real interesting facts here. A new dam for Fish and Lizzie Lake. The 85-year-old dam on the Pelican River between Fish Lake and Lake Lizzie will be transformed into a natural rapids-like environment. I've seen those before. They're really pretty. The dam will be made from boulders, which is much more cost-effective and long-term planning. The lifespan of the dams in Minnesota is 50 years, and most are already near that age and have had many failed attempts to rebuild within that time. The dam will allow water to flow through the rocks, and so will fish and other aquatic habitat, making it a much more habitable environment. The full article on the Pelican Rapids Press, and you find a link on our website, lakelifeweekend.com. The Star Lake Association receives the COLAS Award. Congratulations. The Otter County Coalitions of Lake Associations named the Star Lake Property Owners Association with the COLAS Association Award of the Year. The goal of the COLA is to have association members come together to help keep waterways clean and prevent the spread of invasive species. So I think I know whoever owns property in our area, we are concerned about preserving the waters, and so I think as every guest that is coming to our area. So thank you for that, and thank you for the Star Lake Association. Some events, we have Tuesdays in the Park concerts and more online at lakelifeweekend.com. Some highlights here. The Minnesota Flyers host a pontoon cruise around Detroit Lake, August 31st, 6 p.m. through 7 p.m. It's a $40 charge for attendees who can enjoy a relaxing cruise around the lake. More info is on our website. The Steam Threshers reunion. I've been there before every year. It's September 1st noon through September 4th noon. And the Steam Threshers reunion is in South Hawley. It's the 64th annual event. So more details on our website. And we have a Zorbis dog run, right, with the Dick Beardsley Marathon this upcoming weekend. We have the first annual Zorbis dog run is held in conjunction with that marathon. It's a 1-mile race beginning and ending at Zorbis. The dog will walk or run along with a human and must be on a leash, 9 a.m. through 1 p.m. for whoever takes 4 hours. And then followed by that is the Zorbis Beer Run from 3 p.m. through 4 p.m. That's only 1 hour. That's so funny. The dog owners have 4 hours and the beer runners have 1 hour. Good. That's the 5th annual Zorbis Beer Run event. Check that out. More details on our website. And then we have the Ladies Loppet Mountain Bike Race, also September 2nd, 8 a.m. Through the following day, 5 p.m. It's a 2-day event. The Ladies Loppet Race is part of the Minnesota Mountain Bike Series at Maple Log Resort. So check that out on our website or go to maplelog.com. Thank you very much for tuning in, and now stay here with me for our interview with Nick Leonard, and have a great weekend ahead. Happy Labor Day weekend. Hello and welcome to our interview part. I'm here with Nick Leonard from Otter County. Hello, Nick.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. I apologize, we will have some background noise, please bear with us. But before we speak about Otter County, tourism, economic development, a little bit resort, all those things that lake life bear in Otter County or entail. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Nick, please.
Sure. So I grew up actually in rural Iowa, northeast Iowa, in a kind of a farming community. And when I was about 5, my parents took us on our very first family vacation, and that was to Ottertail County. And so and we didn't know where we were going. As you know, we had someone had recommended, hey, you should go to this particular resort. And I have vivid memories of that very first vacation. Middle of the night, my parents loaded us into our old station wagon. Many people remember the kind with the seats facing backwards. And we made about a 10-hour trip up to Ottertail County, and that was our very first trip. And that began almost a 30-year kind of tradition of us going to Ottertail County once a year, so for the first few years it was just my family and I. Pretty soon we had some friends that heard about this place, and all of a sudden they said, hey, well, we want to come along too. And before we knew it, it was half the town. The week after 4th of July, we made our way to Ottertail County. And so I remember when I was probably about 16 years old, we always had such a great week. And I remember I was about 16 years old, and I was talking to some other teenagers, and I was like, well, where are you guys from? And one of them said, well, I'm just from Detroit Lakes, just a few miles from here. And I was like, what? You live here? Like, people get to live in this place. And it just clicked, and I said, this is a place that I want to live. And so when I graduated high school, I moved to Minnesota, and
really
have never looked back. It was it was one of those things. As a kid, it just attracted me. I fell in love with the lakes area, and had the good fortune while I was in college to meet my wife, who also she's from rural Minnesota, not lakes country, but shortly, as soon as we were able, we moved up to lakes country.
Well, yeah, everybody says always welcome, which is of course not true here, but so your history, you actually come since you were 5. That's fascinating. I did not know that. I knew very little about your past. I think that's great, because you're proving tourism as it works in Minnesota, and you have a lot to share since then, because now you work of what you have been doing in the past, right? You work for the tourism. Explain a little bit your role for Ottertail County.
Sure. Yeah. My specific title is External Relations Director. In my role, my department, we oversee essentially all external relations as it relates to Ottertail County government. So communications, economic development, tourism. It's really, we see our job is how do we work with the private sector and others, including the tourism industry, to get people here, because like myself, people, once you're exposed to this area, you want to come back. In fact, we have really good data that talks about, we did a study a couple years ago with the Center of Small Towns that looked at kind of visitor perception of our area. And the one thing that stood out among everything else is that our visitors are very, very loyal. Once you come here, you're going to come back. People fall in love with it, and I'm a great example of that. So it is. It's I suppose ironic that a kid at 5 who grew up coming here, 30 plus years later now gets to have the luxury of kind of overseeing that on behalf of the county. It's really my pleasure and a dream come true.
I'm a numbers guy. I don't know how many. Let's talk some statistics.
Sure.
If we can. Do you know how many visitors we have in Ottertail in specific?
Well, it's hard to put a number on specifically on visitors. We know, we've got a variety of different estimates, but one of the trends one of the statistics that you hear a lot is that Ottertail County doubles in size during the summer months. We're a county of about 60,000 people, which would mean that during the summer months, at any given time, we've got about 120,000 people here. We've analyzed this a few different ways, and it's actually probably not quite double, but it's probably very close. When you figure in all of the people that come as a result of our resort and campground industry, our motels and hotels, our state parks, and then you add in, the fact that a significant percentage of our lakes are surrounded by what are called seasonal kind of cabins and second homeowners. When you start adding that in, the population really does boom. I think it's very, very it's a very, very fair estimate to assume that we have well above 100,000 people here during the summer months. Does it double? There's probably some weekends that it does, 4th of July and others, but yeah, and it is, in terms of how many of those are visitors, it's hard to put an exact number on because we have 2 beautiful state parks. We have, it's hard to say how many people are coming and spending time with their relatives and in lake homes, but it's significant growth that we see.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm processing what I'm hearing as always. And in Germany, I can refer to that. We have a tax. Like if we have a recreational area like this, it's called Kurtaxe. Kur is cure. Actually, it's where you recreate. It's a recreational tax.
Right.
So when you are a guest to, let's say, Otter County, you pay a recreational tax, and it's like $3.50 for the week.
Right.
Something like that, very insignificant. But I assume that gives us lots of statistics, right? Obviously, but we don't have something like this here, do we?
We do. Well, we do not have a lodging tax at a county level. What we have is we have lodging taxes at various local levels of local government. So, for example, the city of Perham has a lodging tax, but it only applies to those facilities in the city limits of Perham. Fergus Falls has a lodging tax, but the vast majority of our county does not have a lodging tax. So as a result, it's pretty difficult to measure.
Sure.
What we do know, we can keep track of sales tax by tax category. So we can look at, for example, Ma Resort is one tax category. So we can look at revenue statistics from the Department of Revenue. They come out every year, and usually they're about a year behind. But every year we look at that, and one of the things that we know is, despite in Otter Tail County, and this is not unique to Otter Tail, across Minnesota, we actually know we have a shrinking resort industry, not a growing resort industry, unfortunately. But despite our industry shrinking, we know that revenue generated as a result of those resorts and hotels, motels, is actually continuing to increase. So
really?
We have fewer resorts, fewer recreational properties, but revenue continues to grow.
Bookings.
Yeah. So you'll hear many people say, "Oh, the reason the resort industry is declining is because people just don't like that resort, that particular trend."
Yeah.
Completely untrue. In fact, if anything, they're as popular as ever. And as we have fewer and fewer of them, that puts a burden on our other types of recreational opportunities, such as state parks and otherwise. But it's a trend that we hate to see in Otter Tail County and across Minnesota, to be perfectly honest. Because what that means is every time a resort closes or goes into some other type of arrangement, that means that we have fewer and fewer people that ultimately are going to have access to our lakes. It means there's going to be fewer and fewer people that have the opportunity to be exposed to our beautiful county, and it means and when they're not exposed to our county, they're less likely to move here, they're less likely to take a job here, and they're less likely to bring their families, and that's our ultimate goal, is to get them here.
It makes absolute sense, and I'm actually interested, happy to hear this. So what do you do to support, first, how many resorts do we have left, and then is there a support to resort owners if I wanted to open a resort? You know what my question is?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the trend since the 80s, when we were about at our peak in terms of resorts in Minnesota, Otter Tail County has lost about 50% of our resorts. So we have half of the resorts that we had back in the 1980s. They're changing. So what's happening, they're not just all closing, they're going to different models where they might simply, a resort, and let's just say a resort with 10 cabins. It might say, the owners might say, look, we're tired, we've done this for a long time, we're going to take each of those 10 cabins and we're going to sell them off to 10 different families, which is a perfectly reasonable and a sound economic decision on their part. And business owners have to do what makes sense for them from a business standpoint. The problem that happens is, so that resort prior to closing or changing its ownership used to be host to 10 families every week for, at a minimum, 12 weeks per year. So that was 120 families that brought their dollars with, right? And as well as I do, when you go on vacation, you're on vacation. So, all of a sudden, you see a $12 drink and a coconut. You're like, oh, of course, I'll buy a $12 drink and a coconut. But now all of a sudden, it's just 10 families that have those, which now you own it. Now you have a mortgage on it. You have taxes on it. And so pretty soon that $12 coconut doesn't look as desirable. So it's a huge economic problem. But so we at a county level have said, we might not be able to stop this trend, but we're going to do whatever we can to preserve the resort industry, because we know from an economic standpoint how important it is to not just that business, but the trickle down that it has to all of our businesses. I mean, there are gas stations and grocery stores in this county that if we lose that economic, the tourism kind of component, they'll go away. So what we're doing is we're doing a number of things. One is we have a economic development tax abatement policy in Ottertail County, and we've called out 3 things specifically that we want to promote. One is childcare, one is workforce housing, and the third is resorts and tourism businesses. So if you're willing to make an investment in a resort in Ottertail County, keep it available for transient use, we've got a tax abatement policy that would benefit you as a business owner. And we've seen several businesses. It's only been around for about a year, but we've seen several businesses reach out and take advantage of that. Another thing that we do is we've invested significantly, along with our private sector, in promoting Ottertail County. So if you've seen the Find Your Inner Otter campaign, it's a significant marketing campaign that we as a region have invested in, and really trying to make sure that Ottertail County is on the map. And so
has that been successful? You have measures?
Yeah, tremendously successful. In fact, we're in our 3rd year. It's won. Explore Minnesota has a marketing award that is presented each year, and it's pretty stiff competition. It's against places like Duluth, Mall of America. I mean, big marketing budgets. And Find Your Inner Otter is one of the only campaigns that has won the award 2 consecutive years. So the campaign has been astronomically successful. Our social media presence is really unparalleled statewide. So that's been a very, very successful tool that is, again, it's not going to stop that trend, but we're making a dent and taking it really seriously.
We try to identify that let's say people double in the summer months at least. I know that we have year-round guests too, I assume, but where are they coming from? Is it the Iowas? Where can you spot where our guests are coming from?
We do. We keep good. One thing I didn't share in my introduction is prior to this job, I was actually a researcher with the University of Minnesota. I took several years ago. I made a kind of a 180-degree turn, and this opportunity presented itself. So I'm a data nut.
You're good with numbers.
I'm a researcher. So anything we do is evidence-based and driven by data. So we do know where people are coming from. Some of that is historically driven. So Ottertail County, reason we have much of the infrastructure that we have is because of back in the late 1800s, mid 1800s, when people from Chicago and Illinois and some of the metropolitan areas wanted to get away in the summer, this is the place that they picked. And so they wanted much of the infrastructure that they had where they were from. And so our phones, our roads, a lot of that is thanks to those early vacationers. So we know that we still have segments of our county, believe it or not, that have heavy Illinois presence. People out of the Chicago and various parts of Naperville, Normal. We know that we can literally, because of historical trends, we know that we've got people coming to certain areas within Ottertail County. The I-29 corridor is a huge pull for us. So basically the Dakotas, from Fargo to Bismarck and all the way down into South Dakota, and actually Omaha and Council Bluffs is a huge draw for Ottertail County. And then of course we get lots of people from, Wisconsin tends to not be it's not that we don't see any, but it tends not to be as robust.
They have their own lakes?
I think in part they have their own traditions. They have their own lakes. They're also not that far from other tourism destinations such as Door County and other destinations. So they tend to have maybe a greater variety of options than someone coming from Bismarck, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
But then we also have a lot of folks just from Minnesota. It's here. I think we tend to think that almost everybody has got access to lakes, but the reality is most Minnesotans don't. And so we have a lot of people from various parts of Minnesota, including the Twin Cities, that this is their one opportunity to kind of get exposed to lake life.
Okay.
And so yeah, we've got some pretty good numbers on that, and it tends to not, it tends to be within drivable distances. But and to some extent we've seen some changes in that. One of the big changes has been the Dakotas because of the oil boom several years ago, and really the agriculture boom. We've really seen a pretty heavy shift from the North Dakota in particular. Seeing people from further west making their way to Otter Tail County.
A positive shift, like an
Positive increase, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So because they have more people available, what's the closest kind of, okay.
Yeah, and I think more resources. I think that and I think they're also, to be perfectly honest, I think that for many people in the Fargo-Moorhead market and even further west, I think that they thought that the lake stopped at Detroit Lakes. And I think that we're seeing increasingly that they're saying, oh, you mean there's lakes beyond Detroit Lakes? So I think we're starting to see more and more people making their way into Otter Tail County who historically might have stopped at Becker County.
Ah, okay, so more awareness.
Absolutely.
So due to the campaigning and I mean, just looking at a map would help. But yeah, so it was just not so on the map. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we heard a lot about tourism and resorts. Just one number. Do we know how many resorts are in Otter Tail County? Do we know 751? Or?
Depends on what database you use, right? So I would say that probably if you looked at our tax data in terms of how many indicate that they meet that tax classification, there's probably right around 100.
100 resorts only?
100 resorts only. Yeah, and actually, if you really looked at how many are functioning, so right, it's operating as transient resorts. Some resorts have that classification, but they aren't currently operating that way. We're probably closer to 60 to 70.
Really?
Currently operating, yeah. And like I said, it's half of what we had 25 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. What other, not necessarily lake life, but I mean, is there other industry? I guess it's egg, and then it's tourism. We don't have a lot of production, right? The landmark would be Lund, yeah, or like internationally known. Is there any other industry in Otter Tail County that was driven from a lake life thing? There Lund
boats. The history is that it started in a gentleman's garage, right? Another example of a pretty substantial manufacturer that is as a result of lake life is Shoremaster Docks and Lifts, right? So Shoremaster Docks and Lifts, one of the premier dock and lift provider right out of Fergus Falls, Minnesota. There's nothing more connected to the only people that need docks and lifts are people that have water, right?
Sure.
And so that's another.
They manufacture here too.
Out of Fergus Falls is their primary operations. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Okay, I didn't. Yeah, right. There's a couple. Yeah. What other industries do we have? Like if you say, for example, they come as a tourist, and now how do we keep them here? I mean, like they do need a job, right?
Right.
We have a little bit of M-State here and there, but we don't have enough room for too many more teachers, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. What jobs are available?
We have if you watch national news, all you hear about is the need for jobs, the need for jobs, the need for jobs. We're actually the opposite. When you used to have my job, they called individuals like myself smokestack chasers, right? It was our job to go out and find companies to come here to provide jobs. My job has really become more about finding workers. We actually have what we call our Rural Rebound Initiative. It's all about, we have hundreds of unfilled jobs in Otter Tail County, and really they run the gamut. Right here in Perham, there's a great example of, entire shifts that aren't being filled because of lack of workers. So we've got everything from line workers, so intro level, and I don't say a line worker to suggest it's not a good paying job. You start looking at the benefits packages associated with some of these intro level kind of jobs. They've got good pay, good benefits, and to be perfectly honest, really great opportunity for growth because we tend to be an older demographic. We have people exiting the workforce much more quickly than entering. So there's tremendous opportunity if you're willing to take a job and get familiar with your company. There's really great, and maybe develop some skills while you're there. There's tremendous opportunity for individuals with really no other, other than the soft skills of showing up and being able to take direction. We've got some great opportunities. We've got a huge demand for healthcare. So whether you're a nurse practitioner, a nurse, a physician, a nurse's aide, someone that wants to work in some other capacity, a pharmacy, we've got healthcare positions and entire wings of nursing facilities and assisted living that can't open because of shortage of workers. So we literally spend a significant, again, we don't talk about how to bring in businesses. Not that we wouldn't welcome, a great small business or other medium, large-sized businesses. We'd love to have them. But to be perfectly honest, we're focused on how do we convince people to come here, get exposed to our area, and hopefully stay here, bring their kids. We've got world-class educational opportunities, and really across the occupational kind of continuum, we've got opportunities for people. And we have a full-time person. That's all they focus on. I watch them in real time via our social media channels. I watched this week someone from Sioux City, Iowa say, "Hey, I think that your area looks pretty cool. My wife and I are looking for a change. What do you have for opportunities?" I watched in real time via Messenger on Facebook. Our Rural Rebound Initiative coordinator, talked this person from Sioux City, Iowa, and by the end of this thread, he had 3 job interviews in this area at 3 different manufacturers. And if he and his wife want to move here, not only will they have a job, but we'll help them find housing, because we've got, if it can't be right in the town that they find the job, we've got great communities that largely are bedroom communities and provide that valuable housing that we need for our workers. And so I watch it in real time. I watched another one yesterday, a legal assistant looking for a job, wanting to move out of North Dakota. They're looking for an opportunity here, and I watched in real time our Rural Rebound person set them up with 2 different job interviews. So
fascinating. So Otter County is growing, yeah?
It's a myth. People believe that rural Minnesota and Otter County are dying. They say, the whole brain drain kind of idea that we're losing our best and our brightest. It's not real. It's a made up kind of largely media driven.
It's fake news.
Fake news, right? Yeah. As if we need more fake news. But it's not true. If you look at the data, the only out migration that we have is between the ages of 18 and 25.
To go to college. And they come back.
And the only place that doesn't have out migration is the Twin Cities and the few places within Minnesota that have colleges. Every other place. But Otter County has in-migration in every other age range.
Coming in.
In-migration, meaning it's terminology that industry terminology, but meaning more people are coming in than are leaving in every other age group except for 18 to 25.
And that's good though, because they need to get skills and develop their talent and then bring it back. And I see so many people. We are one age group here, and I meet a lot of people in our age group that just recently they came back, and I always look at them. You always coming back. I mean, I live here too, so I love it. But they do come back, and then with a big backpack of talent. So it's actually really good. So good.
Well, the whole concept, if you go to other countries, and you may have firsthand experience of this, but you go to other countries and if you were to say to them, "Oh, hey, we're experiencing a brain drain," and they'd ask you, "Well, what do you mean?" And you said, "Well, we're losing all of our 18 to 25-year-olds." They'd laugh at you. They'd say, "Well, what do 18 to 25-year-olds know?" And I'm not demeaning. I mean, 18 to 25-year-olds provide very important skills, and they have specific talents. But the reality is they're young.
That's what I meant. They leave to earn a skill or get input. Yeah. What do they mean? They mean nothing so far.
Well,
you know what I mean.
And we don't. I mean, and I'm not suggesting we want them to leave. We'd love to keep them all if we could. But the reality is, it's happening. Let's not lose sleep over it. the more important thing is they're coming back.
To get them back.
That's right.
That's what I meant too, of course. Let them go and learn abroad in the New Yorks and the LAs, and they come back to raise the family, and then they come skilled, experience, and they can change and improve us, because we need to it's good.
Yep.
So I'm glad to hear. So we are growing. So what else do we want to know about Otter County? There's the train.
There's the train. Yeah. I think we're working really hard on a number of important topics, and I just did an interview recently with a very significant economic development magazine, a national magazine, and they said to me, well, why is Ottertail County? I mean, they were featuring Ottertail County because of our workforce recruitment and our Rural Rebound initiative, and they said, well, what's unique about you? What and there are many things, but I'll tell the audience one. Ottertail County is the type of place, and you've seen this, that they're not afraid. They're not going to wait for someone else to solve their problems, right? And we're not afraid to admit that we have challenges. Childcare is currently a challenge here, but we're not going to wait. We're just going to, with the public, the private sector, work together in cooperation to solve that challenge. And I see that going on across the county right now. Housing. Workforce housing is a challenge in some communities, to make sure that we have enough houses for people to take jobs. We acknowledge it as a problem or a challenge, but we don't hide from it. But the thing that distinguishes Ottertail County and our communities from, in my opinion, most other rural places is we acknowledge it and we work together to solve the problems. We don't cry about it. We don't waste time talking about how it's unfair. We just say, okay, it's a problem, let's solve it. And I see it every day. I see it in every one of our communities, small to large, really bright people from both the public and private sector and our nonprofits that say, yeah, that's a challenge and we're going to solve it. And it's why I have it's why my job is so fun, because I get to be part of this countywide and see how in a very short amount of time communities can basically take what are really significant barriers to economic growth and resolve them.
Yeah. No, it was really interesting. One thing we didn't touch is, and I would like to say that you serve on a committee in St. Paul.
Yeah. So in my capacity as the kind of external relations director, I'm part of the Governor's Tourism Council. So each governor has a tourism council that essentially oversees and provides direction for Explore Minnesota. And I have the good fortune of I represent all Minnesota counties on that council, and so I have the luxury of seeing what's happening statewide as well. And honestly, I think we're doing really, really important and good work here in Ottertail County. But I think also at a state level, we've raised the bar. We were being outspent by most other states a few years ago, by almost the majority of states as it relates to getting people to our state. But in recent years, the state has increased funding to tourism promotion, to raising our awareness. We're still not nearly competitive enough. We're getting crushed by states like Wisconsin and Michigan, who have substantially larger marketing budgets than we do, but we're making significant gains, and I'm just really lucky to have a voice and to be part of kind of that decision making down in the Twin Cities.
Yeah, Explore Minnesota. I like the campaign. So Wisconsin and Michigan is more successful. What is
Explore in Michigan? I wouldn't say they're necessarily more successful, but they have substantially larger budgets to do their work. And so when you look at overall spending to put your state on the map, there are specific states that consistently have very large budgets. That in Michigan, you'd be hard not to see a commercial. I mean, they've got a very robust marketing campaign to draw people into Michigan. Wisconsin, the same thing. We want to keep working at and figuring out how do we make sure that Minnesota is identified as kind of that select set of destinations.
Yeah. And we live in it. Yeah. We're fortunate.
That's for sure.
Lake life. Yeah. Sometimes I forget. You forget where you live. we need to remember looking at a lake is something special for most people, actually, and we are fortunate enough. Well, yeah, I think we learned a lot. Anything you want to add?
No, I just thank you for the opportunity. Thanks. One thing we haven't talked a lot about is that I'll just mention is, the whole resort trend is maybe something that we wish wasn't happening, but the reality is one of the things we see happening is the a lot of those visitors they're not coming, but rather one of the things we see a trend is the vacation rental by owner. So we see more and more private vacation rentals that people say, you know what, I'd like to own a cabin, but here's a way that maybe I can do it and offset some of the cost a little bit. And as a county, we've really said, look at, some places have taken a very oppositional kind of approach to that. And as a county, we've said, no, we want it as long as it's safe and it's quality. We have a very simple process for people to get their vacation rental licensed. And we embrace it. We say, look, you're part of the puzzle. And so we want it to be safe. We want it to be environmentally safe.
You do need a license?
Yeah. So in Otter Tail County, well, statewide actually, there's statute that says all vacation rentals need to be licensed. Otter Tail County, we happen to control that at the local level.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, from out of state statute, it says, but it's not a hard. We've got many vacation rentals in Otter Tail County. It's not a very taxing process. Basically, it requires, I think, an inspection every couple of years and to fill out the paperwork. But we've really seen that trend, and that's one that, to be perfectly honest, can be very positive for our area.
Yeah.
So,
if people want to get a hold of you, which website is the best, or Otter Tail County? Where do find people contact?
I'll give you a couple. You can go to the Otter Tail. If you just search Otter Tail County, the government website, they can find my information there. Another one of the websites we work very closely with. There's a regional nonprofit marketing organization called Otter Tail Lakes Country, and that website is ottertaillakescountry.com or findyourinnerotter.com. They can find more information about what we're doing, and certainly they can always email me, and the best way, to be perfectly honest, is just go to our county website and look for Nick Leonard in the directory. Government emails have a tendency to have a lot of dots and unnecessary complications. So
people can Google and find you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, good. Well, thank you very much to give us some insight on Otter Tail County and tourism, and maybe speak to you again next year and in a volume 2 here in the second session.
Great. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Yeah, this was already our newest episode of the Lake Life Weekend podcast. We sure hope you enjoyed it. Tune in again next week with another great guest and updates. Always check out our website, lakelifeweekend.com, and if you have some comments, please feel free to email us at hello@lakelifeweekend.com, and you have a wonderful weekend ahead.